The Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil flows, is now effectively under dispute as Iran's parliament speaker warns that time is running out for ceasefire talks, while Israeli jets pound Lebanese positions just 200 kilometers from Damascus. What started as calculated strikes has spiraled into a regional crisis that could reshape global energy markets within days, not months. This escalation didn't emerge from nowhere. The current Iran-Israel conflict traces back to decades of proxy warfare, but the immediate trigger came from competing claims over maritime boundaries in the eastern Mediterranean, where newly discovered gas fields worth an estimated $400 billion lie beneath contested waters. Iran's support for Hezbollah in southern Lebanon has always been about more than ideology. It's about controlling the northern approach to these energy reserves while maintaining pressure on Israel's northern border. The Abraham Accords fundamentally shifted regional dynamics by isolating Iran diplomatically, but also economically, as Gulf states normalized relations with Israel and began coordinating energy exports that bypassed Iranian influence entirely. Few realize that Iran's current military doctrine, developed after the 2020 Soleimani assassination, explicitly calls for escalating any regional conflict to threaten global oil supplies, forcing major powers to intervene diplomatically rather than militarily. This strategy banks on economic leverage when conventional military options remain limited. Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf's warning that time is running out comes as Israeli F-35 stealth fighters conducted their third major strike operation against Iranian-supplied weapons depots in Lebanon's Bekaa Valley within 72 hours. Intelligence sources confirm these strikes targeted advanced Fateh 110 missiles capable of reaching Tel Aviv with precision guidance systems, weapons that crossed from Syria into Lebanon despite ceasefire monitoring mechanisms. The Israeli Defense Forces report destroying approximately 60% of these missile stockpiles, but Hezbollah's response has been measured, firing only short-range Katyusha rockets that caused minimal damage but maximum psychological impact on Israeli border communities. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps has reportedly moved additional military advisors into Lebanon through Damascus International Airport, using civilian aircraft to mask military cargo transfers, a clear violation of existing agreements but difficult to prevent without escalating further. Kuwait's accusation that Iran launched drone strikes against its oil facilities adds another dangerous dimension, though Tehran's immediate denial suggests either rogue elements within the Revolutionary Guard or a false flag operation designed to complicate diplomatic efforts. President Trump's statement that Iran is doing a very poor job of allowing oil through the Strait of Hormuz indicates that existing agreements between Washington and Tehran regarding energy transit are under severe strain, with implications far beyond the immediate conflict zone. Iran's supreme leader Ali Khamenei faces a complex calculation as domestic pressure mounts for stronger responses to Israeli actions while international isolation deepens. His recent statement that Iran does not want war but will defend its rights reflects this delicate balance between appearing strong domestically while avoiding actions that could trigger massive American retaliation. Netanyahu's decision to greenlight Israel-Lebanon talks in Washington suggests Israeli intelligence believes the current military pressure campaign has achieved maximum tactical advantage and that diplomatic consolidation of gains is now preferable to continued escalation. However, Hezbollah operates with significant autonomy from Iranian control, meaning Hassan Nasrallah could choose to escalate even if Tehran prefers restraint. Trump's administration appears to be leveraging Iran's economic desperation, with sanctions having reduced Iranian oil exports by nearly 80% since 2021, making any disruption to remaining energy revenues potentially catastrophic for the Islamic Republic's stability. The timing of these talks, scheduled for next week, coincides suspiciously with quarterly oil futures contracts, suggesting economic warfare through market manipulation may be as important as military actions. India finds itself in an exceptionally precarious position as External Affairs Minister Jaishankar finalizes agreements to supply oil and gas to Mauritius amid this West Asian crisis. India imports nearly 90% of its crude oil requirements, with approximately 15% coming from Iran despite American sanctions, using complex rupee-based payment mechanisms and third-country intermediaries. Any complete closure of the Strait of Hormuz would force Indian refineries to source replacement crude at significantly higher prices from African and American suppliers, potentially adding $40 per barrel to import costs within weeks. The Chabahar port project, India's strategic investment in southeastern Iran worth over $500 million, becomes virtually worthless if Iran-US relations collapse entirely, eliminating India's primary land route to Afghanistan and Central Asian energy markets. Indian naval assets in the Arabian Sea have quietly increased patrols near the Strait of Hormuz, officially for anti-piracy operations, but actually to gather intelligence on Iranian naval capabilities and potential choke point strategies. Finance Ministry projections suggest that sustained oil prices above $90 per barrel, likely if this conflict continues, could reduce India's GDP growth by nearly 1 percentage point, while triggering inflation that undermines domestic political stability. The rupee has already weakened by 3% against the dollar since fighting intensified, and foreign institutional investors have pulled nearly $2 billion from Indian markets in the past month alone. 3 scenarios emerge from current trajectories, each carrying distinct global implications. The most likely outcome involves limited Israeli-Lebanese talks producing a temporary monitoring arrangement, while Iran quietly reduces weapons shipments to Hezbollah in exchange for gradual sanctions relief, allowing both sides to claim victory while preventing economic catastrophe. The worst-case scenario sees Iran closing the Strait of Hormuz entirely after accidental escalation, possibly triggered by mistaken identity during night operations, forcing American military intervention and oil prices exceeding $150 per barrel within days. However, the most surprising development could involve China directly mediating between Iran and Israel, leveraging its massive energy import requirements and Belt and Road investments to force compromise, fundamentally altering Middle Eastern diplomatic architecture in ways Washington cannot control. Recent talks between North Korean and Chinese foreign ministers suggest Beijing is coordinating with other American adversaries to present unified positions during any crisis, potentially limiting American options more than traditional analysis suggests. The next 72 hours will determine whether this crisis becomes a manageable regional dispute or triggers the first genuine global energy emergency since 1973. Pakistan's anxiety about upcoming US-Iran talks reflects broader concerns among developing nations that their energy security depends entirely on decisions made in Washington and Tehran by leaders who may not fully understand the cascading economic consequences of miscalculation. Australia's explicit rejection of any offensive role suggests even traditional American allies are hedging their commitments when nuclear-armed regional powers engage in brinksmanship near critical global infrastructure. The Asian Development Bank's warning that Asian economies face formidable tests as Middle Eastern conflicts drag on understates the reality that global economic recovery from recent disruptions cannot withstand another major supply shock. If this briefing gave you a clearer picture of what's happening in the world, subscribe to Global Briefing Room, new intelligence briefing every day. Will Iran's next move be strategic patience or desperate escalation? And how will markets react when Asian trading opens tomorrow morning?